In the last video, we assessed risk. Now we face the threat. What are attackers actually doing to AI systems? And when the threat comes through your vendor, through a pre-trained model, through an open source library, how do you manage risk you didn't build yourself? This video goes deep into adversarial AI threats, the OWASP LLM top 10, and the full vendor risk lifecycle. This is some of the most technically specific content in the exam, and it's worth knowing cold. Let's talk about how attackers actually target AI systems because it's different from traditional cyber attacks. Evasion attacks manipulate the inputs to a deployed AI model to fool it into making the wrong decision. Classic example, slightly altering an image of a stop sign so an autonomous vehicle's AI fails to recognize it. Poisoning attacks are more insidious. They corrupt the training data before or during model training, embedding malicious behavior that only activates later. Model extraction involves querying a model's API repeatedly to reconstruct it, essentially stealing your intellectual property through the front door. And model inversion works in the other direction. Attackers use the model's outputs to reverse engineer what was in the training data. If your model was trained on sensitive medical records, model inversion could expose those records indirectly. These aren't theoretical. All of these have been demonstrated against real production systems. Beyond the core four, there are additional AI-specific threats the exam expects you to know. Membership inference determines whether a specific individual's record was included in the training dataset, a serious privacy violation when the model relates to health, finance, or criminal history. Backdoor or Trojan attacks embed hidden behavior in a model that's triggered by a specific input, like a model that performs normally in all cases except when it sees a particular image watermark, at which point it classifies everything as safe. Prompt injection is particularly relevant for large language models. An attacker crafts inputs that manipulate the model's behavior, bypassing its safety guidelines. And then, deepfakes and autonomous AI agents represent an emerging frontier that's already appearing in threat intelligence reports. The exam won't go deeply technical on these, but you need to know what they are and what control category addresses each one. The OWASP top 10 for large language models is one of the highest frequency topics in this exam. Let me walk through the ones that matter most. LLM-01 is prompt injection. An attacker hijacks the model's behavior through crafted input. Think of it like SQL injection, but for natural language. LLM-02 is insecure output handling. Downstream systems blindly trust and act on whatever the LLM outputs without validation. LLM-03 is training data poisoning. Corrupted data shapes the model's behavior at the source. And LLM-06 is sensitive information disclosure. The model leaks personally identifiable information or confidential business data because it was included in the training data and the model hasn't been properly secured against extraction. I always tell students, these four alone account for a significant portion of LLM-related exam questions. Know them by number, name, and implication. Let me cover the remaining high-priority OWASP LLM items. LLM-05 is supply chain vulnerabilities, compromised components, datasets, or pre-trained models introduced into your AI pipeline. LLM-07 is insecure plugin design. Plugins or extensions connected to the LLM bypass security controls and introduce new attack surfaces. LLM-08 is excessive agency. The AI takes actions beyond its intended scope, sometimes with real-world consequences. Imagine an AI assistant that was given the ability to send emails and through a prompt injection attack started sending unauthorized communications. And LLM-10 is model theft, intellectual property stolen through repeated API probing or insider access. Together with the four from the previous slide, these make up the OWASP LLM top 10. I recommend creating a simple reference sheet with the number, name, and a one-line example for each one. That preparation pays off significantly on exam day. Threat intelligence for AI goes beyond your standard threat feeds. You need to actively monitor AI-specific sources, MITRE Atlas for adversarial tactics, vendor advisories for model vulnerabilities, and information sharing and analysis centers relevant to your industry. Dark web monitoring is increasingly important. Stolen AI models, training data, and exploit tools for AI systems are appearing on dark web marketplaces. And here's a threat that's already impacting organizations: AI generated phishing. The content is now indistinguishable from human authored communications. No typos, perfect context, personalized to the target. Traditional phishing detection training is becoming less effective because of this. Threat intelligence isn't just an input to your SIEM, it needs to feed directly into your AI risk register so that new threats are reflected in your risk ratings and control priorities in near real time. How do you assess vulnerabilities in AI systems specifically? Static analysis reviews the AI code, configuration, and pipeline scripts without executing them, looking for insecure coding practices, hard-coded credentials, misconfigured access controls. Dynamic testing actually runs the AI application and tests it for runtime vulnerabilities, including adversarial inputs and boundary condition failures. When you prioritize vulnerabilities for remediation, CVSS scores alone are insufficient for AI. You need to factor in the AI-specific risk context. What's the business impact if this model is compromised, and how likely is exploitation given the threat landscape? And the operational home for AI vulnerability tracking should be your DevSecOps pipeline, integrated into your ticketing system so vulnerabilities are tracked to closure, not just logged and forgotten. Building a vulnerability management program for AI means expanding your scope beyond applications and infrastructure. The program must cover models, datasets, APIs, pipelines, and third-party AI components. Red team exercises, fuzzing, providing random or malformed inputs to find crashes and unexpected behavior, and chaos engineering all contribute to testing AI system resilience. Automated test suites should run on every CI/CD pipeline deployment trigger so that every model update is tested for vulnerabilities before it reaches production. And the findings from vulnerability assessments should feed back into the risk register and the control library, not just into a remediation backlog. If a vulnerability reveals a gap in a control, the control needs to be updated, not just the specific vulnerability patched. Vendor risk for AI has a complexity that doesn't exist in traditional IT sourcing. The EU AI Act introduces a provider-deployer split. The company that builds the AI system has certain obligations, and the company that deploys it in a business context has different ones. As the deployer, you can't offload all accountability to the provider. Your contracts need to make this split explicit. Then there's fourth and fifth party risk, your vendor's vendor, their vendor's vendor. If you're using a cloud AI platform and that platform uses a pre-trained model from a third party, you have supply chain risk 2 levels deep. Classify your AI vendors by criticality. Tier 1 for systems that are critical to core operations, Tier 2 for important but non-critical, Tier 3 for low-risk tools. Your due diligence and monitoring intensity should match the tier. When evaluating an AI vendor, due diligence goes beyond financial stability and security certifications. You need evidence of bias testing. Has the vendor actually tested their model for discriminatory outputs? You need model documentation. Do they have model cards that disclose training data sources, performance characteristics, and known limitations? And you need evidence of access controls governing who at the vendor can access your data and your models. For high-risk AI solutions, anything that will make decisions affecting your customers, employees, or business operations, an AI impact assessment is required before you sign the contract, not after. Vendor scorecards should be living documents. updated at each contract renewal cycle, not filed away after initial due diligence. Let's talk about what your AI vendor contracts must include. Audit rights. The right to assess, test, and inspect the vendor's AI systems are non-negotiable. Without this, you have no independent verification of anything they tell you. Incident notification timelines must be specified. 72 hours for GDPR breaches, for example, with clear escalation paths. Intellectual property and data rights need to be explicit. Who owns the outputs? Who owns the fine-tuned model? Who owns the data used for training? And the SLAs, liability caps, and indemnification clauses should be calibrated to the criticality of the AI system. A low-stakes chatbot and a high-risk credit scoring AI should not have identical liability structures. The exam tests your ability to identify missing contract clauses as the risk gap in a vendor scenario. Supply chain risk for AI has a few controls that are especially important to know for the exam. The Software Bill of Materials (SBOM) tracks all AI component dependencies, including open source libraries, pre-trained model weights, and data pipeline tools. If a vulnerability is found in a component, your SBOM tells you instantly whether you're affected. Pre-trained model provenance verification is essential before any model goes into production. You need to know where it came from, who trained it, on what data, and whether it's been tampered with. Open source AI library risk is real. License compliance issues and embedded vulnerabilities in community-maintained packages are a growing supply chain threat. And supply chain resilience means having backup models and alternative vendor contingencies so a vendor failure doesn't take your AI capabilities offline. Vendor exit planning is the part of vendor risk management that most organizations neglect until they actually need it. Your contracts must include data return obligations, all your data back to you in a usable format within a defined time frame. Certified deletion means the vendor confirms and evidences that your data has been destroyed from their systems. Post-termination data use restrictions must be explicit. The vendor cannot use your data or your model after the contract ends. Transition assistance obligations should be written into the contract, so the vendor is required to support your migration to a new solution. I've seen organizations completely locked out of their own AI outputs because they hadn't addressed this in the contract. The exam tests exit planning as part of the full vendor risk lifecycle, not just an afterthought at contract termination. Let me close with the exam tips that matter most here. OWASP LLM Top 10 is high frequency. At minimum, memorize the top 5 with a real-world example for each. For vendor risk questions, look for the signals shared responsibility and right to audit. Those are almost always the correct answer anchors. Supply chain risk equals pre-trained models plus open source dependencies plus data providers. It's the whole chain, not just your direct vendor. And if a scenario asks, what is the first step when evaluating a new vendor AI tool? The answer is conduct an AI impact assessment. Not sign the contract, not deploy a pilot, assess the risk first. That's the ISACA sequence, and it applies equally to vendor AI as to internally built AI.